Hello and welcome to the Clock and Talk, an Arsenal podcast, and we're covering, for fuck's sake.
Good job me and Schwinn are a lot more prepared than you, because if we came on and went, we didn't watch the game either, we was on the piss, it'd be a pretty shit podcast.
Well, Mesut Ozil is the best number 10 in the Premier League.
Yeah, that all looks good on paper, but there's never been a football match played on paper, so it's not really worth much.
I'm going to make a bold prediction that Jack Wilshere will sign for West Ham United.
It's time to start watching football with your eyes. I think people listen to what the commentator's saying and have that as their own opinion, but if you watch what's going on, you'll see things a lot clearer.
Schwinn, who do you think is going to win the Golden Boot?
I think Alexis Sanchez might do a number on that this year.
Okay. Tony talks about a clock being right twice a day. Tez is right every day. Try it from 5, lads. Fucking beauty. Thank you for listening, thank you for downloading, and welcome to the Clock and Talk podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at @clockand_talk. I'm your host, Tez. You can follow me at Gurner Tez. Each and every week I have two lads joining me, Schwinn and Tony. How are you, Schwinn?
Doing very well. Didn't expect to be introduced first, but thank you very much. Just trying to get through this interlull. It's very, very boring. Haven't watched a single second of any international football, whether that's friendlies or whatever this Nations League crap is. So trying to find ways of distracting me and not quite succeeding at it.
Mate, by me bringing you in first, you've gone up the ladder a little bit, mate. I've dumped Tony down in the shit now. So how are you, Tony?
I was going to say, I feel like I've been relegated. Playing no part in this podcast. Yeah, I'm good. Obviously, football is potentially about to come home in the Nations League, or we're about to get relegated. If we get relegated, it's obviously a shit tournament no one cares about. If we win, then it's the most important thing in world football. So it's coming home.
It's coming home. So Australia got a draw last night.
No one cares, honestly.
You didn't stay up and watch it?
Who did you play in Cuba or some shit?
To be honest, I wouldn't have it. I think it was Korea.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I got no idea. Yeah. Got the Asian Cup coming up too.
You're not in Asia. This is this biggest fucking travesty in football.
With all due respect to all my Asian mates, we've got a lot of Asians in this country, so we're classed as Asian now.
That's not how it works.
Don't ask me.
You're going down a very dangerous path.
I'm thinking I'm getting the fuck out of here before I get into this shit. Okay, so we haven't got a lot to talk about, but we managed to find something as we're just legends of this podcast business. So Arsenal news, we'll come to a bit of that later because we've got some breaking news later. But I just want to get into something the boys think, what fucking breaking news? I've got a couple of competitions running, Urban Arsenal, so we're still flogging the old bloody subscribe to Twitter thing, and you'll win a shirt, but I'm thinking this might be the last week for that one, boys.
I mean, we're not nearly at 500, but we're a lot closer than we were, so give it until after who we got next, Bournemouth game, I guess, yep. and then just draw it from there.
Yep, so we'll draw that one. Now, the new one we've got for those on Twitter, so just send a screenshot of your podcast app on showing that you're subscribing, and you can win a shirt. You'll see the shirts on our Twitter account from Urban Arsenal, so you can get onto that, and we'll do that one next week as well.
Just to be clear, it's not a match shirt. It's an Arsenal T-shirt that they've made.
Yep. Thanks, man. I would have forgot about that. So, okay. Now. Content. Okay, now we're going to speak about the Super League. It's obviously, been throwing around this idea, Tony, for some time. I was looking earlier, 2009. Somebody was saying that they were looking at a European Super League, I suppose, with all the big clubs around the country. I just don't know how it's going to work, though. What's your thoughts on it all, mate?
I mean, my first thought is it's a ridiculous idea and should never happen. Just to give some context, there's been rumours about it for years, but when Football Leaks done their latest round of leaks, they basically revealed that the major teams, and they named them, and were actively discussing it, and we were one of the teams named. And since then, Sanllehi has come out and confirmed that we're in discussions with it. For me, I think it's a terrible idea. I think it kind of kills the identity of football. You will lose a lot of atmosphere in games because people won't travel. It'll be too expensive to go week in, week out, home and away. And it'll be, I don't know if you watch a lot of Spanish football, but away fans tend to not travel, which means you get very little atmosphere because it's all one way and there's no give and take. And I think a European Super League would be like that. There'd definitely be no promotion. There'd be no relegation, I'm assuming. The rich would just get richer. The Champions League would become obsolete because they're all playing each other every week anyway. So that competition would get binned. All of the domestic leagues would fall apart because, I mean, you can imagine a domestic Premier League without the top five. Well, I'll say the top five, the top six, but Tottenham would still be in it because they're not rumoured to be in the Super League. The Spanish league without Barca, Real Madrid, Atletico. The German without Bayern Munich. The league would just fall apart. So it ruins so many domestic leagues. For me, for not much gain. FIFA are heavily trying to block it. And for once, I actually hope FIFA succeed in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Schwinn, what's your take on it, mate?
Similar. I mean, from an initial point of view, I don't want to be left out of the discussion. I'm glad that we are involved. I'm glad we will not be the quote unquote guest team that has been labeled for some of the other teams like Tottenham and what else. If this does materialize, I want to be in it, and I'd rather not be playing in a different tournament. But as Tony very eloquently and briefly described there's a lot of real world issues that will impact this, and the biggest one is the fans. If, let's say, Arsenal are to play Napoli, and this game is going to happen 2 times in a season, and you multiply that by 19 different teams, 3 or 4 of them are going to be in England, so you subtract 8 games, that's still about 30 games or more that you'll have to be traveling throughout continental Europe. That's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be something that is time conducive, and it's frankly going to destroy the sport, not just in the domestic leagues, but as Tony pointed out, the Champions League. I know a lot of people have problems with the Champions League. I think it requires a bit of tweaking, similarly for the Europa League, but I don't think they're necessarily bad tournaments, especially with Europa League's new incentivization for you to get into the Champions League if you win it. So I think there's room for improvement in both of those formats, but I think to break away from the domestic leagues and form this super league is going to be not just a financial disaster. I don't think it's going to bring in the revenue that people might speculate it will. It will also destroy domestic leagues and ruin football as we know it.
Okay, so we all can't be agreeing with each other. Like as I was, it's going to be a very boring showy. So I'm going to play devil's advocate because somebody's got to play the big bad wolf. And this is a disclaimer. I'm not for this. However, I'm going to look at the other side of the coin very quickly. Tony, I think the Premier League goes for a little bit too long. The other leagues, you've got Barcelona and Real Madrid, let's face it, them 2 are the teams in the Spanish league. You've got Bayern in Bundesliga and Juve, maybe, Roma, maybe Inter. You've probably got about 4 or 5 teams, I suppose, competing there, but Juve is obviously the one to beat. So, as a fan, wouldn't you like the Premier League or every league to drop down to let's say maybe 20 games a season, and then have a 10-round European Super League? Could something like that work?
Well, I mean, look, that's not the proposed plan. The plan is it to be its own league that you're just in, and that's what you play instead of your Premier League, your Serie A, your La Liga. So there may be different concepts that could work, but I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't like to see the Premier League drop down to one round or any other La Liga, Serie A, whatnot. I agree with Schwinn in that I'm glad we're at the table talking about it and we're not being left out of it. But I think in this current format, it can't work. And you say a league where you're playing the 10 teams. I mean, first of all, that would mean selecting the 10 teams, and there's no guarantee we would be in them 10 teams. And then, does it make it wildly different from the Champions League? I mean, in the Champions League, you tend to have one good team in your group, one other good team in your group. If you look around the groups, Man United have got Juventus, PSG have got Liverpool, who are all rumoured Super League candidates. And then once you get past the quarters, you tend to, unless there's been some shock results, play the big teams anyway. I mean, even people say Liverpool had an easy year last year getting to the final, but they played, obviously, Real Madrid in the final, who are Super League candidates, Roma in the semi, who are Super League candidates, Man City in the quarters, who are Super League candidates, and that's on an easy year. So if you're saying take it down to like a new version of a Super League where you play your domestic league but shortened, and then you play a Super League, I don't think that's wildly different from the Champions League, because you still end up playing the top teams at some point anyway.
Yeah, I agree. What I don't like, and I suppose more so, you touched on the Super League, on the Champions League. What I don't like, and we've all said it, and we've seen it this season with the Europa League, it's very boring when you're in the group stages. Like, okay, we've all watched the games, but have we had a big discussion here on the podcast about the Europa League? I can't think of a game that we probably touched on for half an hour as opposed to all the games in the Premier League. So I think something needs to be done definitely for the Europa League. Champions League, I do agree with you, but you can get some very boring games in the Champions League up until you're getting into the last 16. I mean,
you can't really compare it to the Europa League because we're maybe a one-off in that we have been a team that's been associated with the Champions League and now we're in the Europa League. In general, the teams in the Europa League wouldn't be considered for the European Super League. As I said, it's probably only us that are in that situation where we was a Champions League team 20-odd years in a row. We have a huge fan base. We bring huge numbers to everything we do. Financially, we make loads of money. So we're being considered, but in reality, we're probably the only one. So I don't think comparing it to what happens in the Europa League really makes much sense. Even in the Champions League, as I said, each group has probably 2 good teams and 2 not so good teams. So you can even discount them. Like, I'm trying to think, United have young boys in their group and City have I think the German team, they have Hoffenheim, I think, not Hoffenheim, or whoever it is, Schalke, Galatasaray. These are all teams that are in the Champions League but wouldn't be anywhere near considered for a Super League. So I don't think you can kind of make flat-out comparisons between the proposed Super League and what's going on currently.
Yeah. Just look. Yeah, look, the group stages, there's obviously, I'm just having a quick look. There's some good group teams in the group stages. Probably. Well, it's because
of the way the seedings are. In general now, it changed a few years ago. In general now, you tend to have 2 good teams and 2 not so good teams. So just because now, obviously, the champions are all in pot 1, so that means that you're going to have at least 3 teams from, say, England who are going to be in pot 2, 3, and 4, and the same in Spain and the same in Germany. So it makes it a lot stronger throughout, whereas before it was just completely seeded on previous European experience. It made it a bit more not so even. I think you tended up to get easier groups before.
Schwinn, I'm looking at, and I haven't got stats and things in front of me, but I'm trying to get my head around it all. Now, I'm looking at it as a business type of thing. You're looking at TV ratings, you're looking at finances coming in. And you look at the World Cup, and it is the bee's knees of game football in the world. Everybody tunes in and everybody watches it. And only have to look in Australia what happened to Optus when they found out that a million Aussies are trying to stream it at once, and it just crashed. So I'm wondering from that side of view in TV. Would the best of the best bring in more of a TV audience and revenue, do you think?
I think there will be a spike initially. I mean, there is no denying that it's a very, very tempting and attractive offer that these teams can put together if they do form the European Super League. No broadcaster is going to turn that opportunity down. There is a couple of different caveats, though. Number one is that with the rise of internet streaming, with Facebook and what Bleacher Report, for example, are doing in the U.S., Amazon is apparently also sniffing around opportunities of streaming Premier League games, and if the European Super League becomes something, then I'm sure they would like to have a crack at that as well. So in terms of the technical capability, I think that exists. I think the financial spike will definitely resonate, especially initially. But what we're forgetting here is that the Champions League does a lot of things that we don't give it enough credit for. There are teams in the Champions League, like, for example, Ajax, Galatasaray. I'm trying to think of more Eastern European teams, for example, they're in the tournament. Stoy Bucharest. We have teams that are really historical powerhouses from their respective countries, and they have a lot of pedigree. Now, what the Champions League helps them do is that it makes them visible on television for some of the younger groups that are new to the sport in terms of tuning in, and it helps them bring in a lot of money. It really dilutes the power of certain big clubs and the prospect of them playing together, and it dilutes these monies coming in from different countries, different continents, and helps them grow. Now, a lot of these clubs have obviously taken the route of Ajax, where they develop talent and then are able to sell them abroad. And this is a way of showcasing that talent. So it really does a very good job in diluting those funds. The prospect of a breakaway will destroy that. You will not find someone tuning in for an Ajax versus Schalke, for example.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. I wonder how many do now, though, Schwinn. I get it being a final, but how many would tune into a... like I'm looking. Have a look at Group D: Porto, Shakhtar. There's Moscow there. Who would tune into them games? Not me.
Look, I mean, I won't either, to be honest, but it's also to do with what else is available to watch. If PSG are playing Napoli that very day during that same time, then I'd probably tune into the PSG game. I'm not saying this is my perspective, but there are people out there who are, and even if they aren't, right, the money is still reaching the clubs. Yeah. So it's still the financial benefit still exists for them, which reverberates over the next few years, because a Frankie de Jong, for example, is gonna bring in that money because he's able to showcase his talent at the UEFA Champions League level, which is probably the elite of the elite at the moment. So I think it will, as Tony said, the rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer. That's the other side of this. And I mean, I understand that in the business world, there's not a whole lot of scope for this, but we have to understand that we have to grow, football has to grow collectively, right? Because if you lose the competition, then who are you going to compete against? And 10 teams, 15 teams is not enough competition, especially to play across different tournaments.
Yeah, but look at Bayern now, okay, they're having a shit season, but who are they been competing with for the last 10 years? Juve, who are they been competing with for the last 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think that fragmentation will lead to a lot of trouble. I mean, coming back to our discussion on the Europa League and the Champions League in terms of how it can get dreary and dry. I mean, I completely agree with that. I think something for people to consider can be tuning down the number of games per group stage. I think having to play 6 games is a factor that contributes towards this boring sort of flat group stages. You don't really get excited till the knockout stages begin. Something that I would probably play around with is the idea of having just 3 games. I know the home and away advantage will factor in here, and that's going to be a critical element of this. But you can do away with away goals, and you can probably decide based on the time zones you're playing in, so that you don't have 2 games on at the same time. And depending on that feasibility, you can choose where the game is played. I know it might lead to some disadvantages, but at least it's random. It's not giving the top-seeded team home advantage. which you would argue that the top seeded team doesn't need an advantage. So if you have two teams playing in Europe on a given day, the team, let's say there's 3 teams from Western Europe and 1 team from Eastern Europe. So the team from Eastern Europe is probably going to be ranked lower in their group stage, but they get to host the game because then you can kick off the game earlier, right? So it's going to add an element of randomness, add an element of maybe a bit more adventure and the unknown. At the same time, because it's 1 game per team, per opposition in the group, it's probably going to be a little more interesting. So I think there's, as I said, maybe this is not a perfect idea. It's just something I had thought of, spontaneously, but there's room for improvement there, and I don't think the European Super League is the answer.
Just to cut in on your point, Tez, you saying who have Bayern and Juventus been competing with for the last few years. At least, I agree, domestically, they haven't really had much competition, but at least they've had the Champions League to go and try and play in. Imagine a Super League. What's to say someone isn't going to run away with that? And then what happens? Then they've got nothing. They have competitions. There's no promotion and relegation. And also at the other end, you say it's a 20-team league, you could come 10 years in a row, but because it's going to be under different governing bodies, there's no relegation. So what's the incentive also, especially if, let's take Arsenal for an example, and a lot of people think Kroenke's only in it for the money. Whether you agree or disagree with that's completely different. They're going to get an astronomical amount of money for the Super League if it happens. So what's to stop him just saying, I don't care, not putting any money into the club, taking all of the fees out, because he knows that money's coming in, year out. They're not going to get relegated. So stop spending high on wages, stop huge transfer fees, and just come 20th every year and pick up your billions of pounds or millions of pounds, whatever it is. I think
that's another worry that they got to balance, isn't it? Really, that is a worry when you look at it that.
Yeah, I think there's so many. I don't really think. The only thing I can see, the only positive I can see, is people say, "Oh, you'd be playing the top teams every week." But even around that, there's, as I said, the issues with travel and the issues of what happens to the domestic leagues and whatnot. I really can't see any positives.
Yeah, I think it'd be, and as I said, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate a little bit here as well, because I do agree with you, both you guys. But the other thing, though, Tony, is the EFL Cup and the FA Cup. What do they mean in terms of football over there?
I mean, the EFL Cup's got a little bit bigger in the last couple of years, but in general, no one really cares. The FA Cup's huge. It's the oldest competition in world football. You can see, especially in the last maybe 5 to 10 years, how seriously the clubs have started taking it again. It may only be tradition that makes it so valuable, but a lot of things are built on tradition, and not just in football. Mm. And if you start taking tradition out of everything, then there's a lot of things that you could say, oh, well, what's the point of that? But the FA Cup here is, especially with the older generation, that for them, it used to be, I know I'm going back loads of years here, way before I was born, but that used to be the only televised game, was the FA Cup final, and it used to be the whole day. Mm. You'd wake up in the morning and there'd be a build-up show from 9 o'clock in the morning, the game would kick off at 3, and then there'd be all the reaction. It'd be like it was an event. The FA Cup was a whole event. Obviously, as well, you can get the upsets, you get teams that are part-timers, not even anything timers, that can enter it and can get a chance at playing a big team. So I think the tradition and the history of it is huge, more than the prestige of it. The prize money isn't great, but as I said, sometimes tradition has to come before money and a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Look, that won't affect the other leagues, but I just wonder whether they're looking at that and thinking, but they're playing a lot of games, with the Premier League, FA Cup, EFL Cup. If you're in Champions League or Europa League, it's a lot of games each season.
Well, that's the other thing with a Super League. It would actually reduce the amount of football being played, because there would be no Champions League. There'd be no. I'd be very surprised if they do a domestic cup, but saying that they might do because of the money it would bring in. But you'd still end up with your league games and your domestic cup. Mm. So, I mean, for me, someone like me who loves football and would watch football every day if I could, you're limiting the amount of football on quite a lot. I mean, I think I've worked out for the last 4 years, I've actually been to over 50 games per season, whereas under European Super League proposals, there would only be about 25, 30 games a season. So because I think they're looking at 16 clubs, so then that's 30 league games, and then if they do a domestic cup, it's a round robin. So, but even if you win it, I think it's a maximum of 4 games. There's only 44 games for the season. So I know what people are saying. Oh yeah, I want to see us play Barcelona, Real Madrid every week. I mean, I don't really care for that anyway. But even if you do, I'd still rather us play 50, 55 games a season than play 30 or low 30s.
Okay, let's finish up on it. Just quickly though, give me, give me a couple of teams you think that would definitely be in it.
Well, it's already been announced who are at the table talking into it. And as I said, I think it's 16 teams. So it was 5 from the Premier League, not including Tottenham.
Yep.
So the others of the top 6. PSG, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico were a bit of a question mark. Bayern Munich, I'm not sure if Dortmund were fully in or as a question mark. I can't remember the teams from Italy, but it was announced.
They're talking Dortmund, Roma, and I think Inter and Milan were going to be like a special team to come in or something. It was weird the way they were talking about it.
Well, yes, I mean, what they were saying is that like the others are guaranteed, so they're in it, they can't go down, and then the other 4 are like sort of fighting for their place, so they'll get in 1 year, and if they perform, they can stay there. They're like floaters, so to speak.
Yeah.
But again, it just it'd be stupid. We could come bottom and there's no consequence. Whereas if a Roma or one of the floating teams come bottom, they go down, and who comes up, because FIFA are talking about banning every player that plays in that from international football because they're not playing under FIFA. So then you'd have to change the structure. Say, for example, Tottenham, if they were another one that they had to play in some domestic league, and then they got invited to the Super League, every player would have to make a career-changing decision. And the difference in money with bankrupt clubs, because the TV rights for domestic deals would completely go, because no one's going to pay billions to watch Burnley against Southampton. So all of the money would be in the Super League.
The Premier League it'd be a bit of shit.
All domestic leagues. But say a Tottenham, and not that I particularly care if they go bust or not, but if they're in the Super League, they're getting all these fortunes, and then they drop down into the Premier League and there's no money anymore. But they have to pay Super League wages while they're there. So unless they've only got players on 1 year rolling contracts, which is never going to happen because players want security, it just messes with everything. I think in a bold term, the idea of the best playing the best all the time kind of works, but I think everything else around it's a failure.
So I just dug it up. So basically, for those who haven't seen it, it was Barcelona, Real Madrid, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, Man United, Juve, AC Milan, Paris, Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich. They guaranteed. Meanwhile, Atletico Madrid, Dortmund, Inter, Roma, Marseille were being considered as invited guests for the first few years at least. I have no idea what invited guests means, but...
well, it's because 12 teams isn't enough for a league, so they're invited teams. And as I said, if they guarantee them a period for years, and it's sort of a see how you do. But then they would have huge problems bringing other teams in because of the reasons I just outlined.
Yeah.
It would also, and it's something that is, for me, quite interesting. You just said the World Cup is the creme de la creme. It got everyone involved, blah, blah, blah. But the World Cup would never be the same again, because if FIFA sticks to what they're saying in banning every player in the European Super League, the World Cup would be shit, because it'd be only the players that are not playing in the Super League, which would be the best players. I mean, if you look at the France team that won it, probably only 3 of them players would be eligible to play in the World Cup. I've not looked into it, but the vast majority of them are at the big sides.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at very few players that could actually play in the World Cup, which then ruins that as well.
It's all very interesting. I wonder hypothetically, like a Real Madrid says, I'm going to put in a second team if FIFA are going to start banning our players. We'll make it work like that. Couldn't say it happened, but don't know. So definitely against it, boys. Schwinn, you got any last thoughts on that, mate, before we move on?
I'll just say quickly that Arsene predicted this 10 years ago.
He did?
More than 10 years ago, yeah. So listen to the man. He always has wisdom.
Okay, Schwinn, I'm going to go to you now with some football leaks.
Yeah. Again, I mean, of course, this whole European Super League was a part of the leagues that have come out recently. Der Spiegel has been doing some amazing work. Let's start off by mentioning them and giving them a shout out. So just some background on football leagues. Apparently, the individual that is in charge of obtaining these documents and then of course disseminating them to some of these publications, we'll call him John because his identity is kept secret. Is a hunted individual. We don't know whether he's a disgruntled agent, a former FIFA employee, but it seems like he looks on the run, doesn't stay in a city for more than 2 days at a time. It's been alleged that certain Uzbekis and Russian henchmen are looking for him and for his head. So he's certainly not doing this out of some ulterior motive. There is, that he's being hunted, as I said. His life is at stake. But the stuff we're going to touch upon, of course, now is what has come out in terms of Man City and Qatar, and in particular the way the clubs are run in association with their Middle Eastern owners from Abu Dhabi and Qatar, respectively. To start off, there's a few aspects to this, so we'll probably go over them one by one, but I'll just mention all of them together. One of the things mentioned is the inflated and phony sponsorship contracts. It seems like a lot of these owners from the Middle East who have their hands in a lot of different vessels have been able to divert funds because of their associations with different companies into the clubs and inflate the sponsorship values. There have been auditing done by companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers and different, major top 500 companies that have valued these as outrageous. And I think one of the financial analysts wrote in his report that any such investment made is not looking at financial return, and you don't make an investment without looking at financial return. So you can tell by this analysis that any of the money being pumped in is simply to utilize on the football level and not to get a return. The second aspect of it is money laundering. Now, it appears that the Man City hierarchy labeled this as Project Longbow, where they were able to funnel money across different borders, and at the same time they were able to offshed a lot of their responsibilities as a football club, whether it's marketing rights, whether it's different sorts of payments that a club makes that gets subtracted from your bill. And when you don't have those payments to make, then you're financially healthier. So they were able to utilize a lot of quote unquote offshoring to be able to balance their books better. It seems there's, in terms of repercussion, there's going to be a lot of intersection of jurisdiction here. Firstly, you have the ESC, which is the European Sports Commission, and then you have UEFA, who, is useless maybe, and one could even argue complicit. We've seen Infantino has been named in the reports, Platini, of course, and in the English team's terms, you have Companies House and the FA, which I'm sure won't take to this cooking of books very kindly, and at the same time the selling of image rights abroad to avoid the extra wages. If I were one of the owners, I'd be more wary if I was Khalifi. I don't think the City Football Group has a lot to worry about because of their soft and hard power in the footballing world. But there has to be a probe in terms of what sort of punishment is required, and it will require a lot of cooperation. I'm going to be a bit pessimistic here and say that in all likelihood there will only be fines that will be levied, which these rich owners don't care about. Expulsion from UEFA isn't quite an option, I think, and we could probably see a transfer ban, but I know that's going to be met with a lot of resistance. So there's a lot of floating elements. There's still a lot of information coming out. What has not been mentioned, which I'm very surprised about, is a team like Bayern Munich. Bayern is owned by Adidas, Audi, and Allianz, and they have been getting contracts and naming rights with these companies for so many years, and it seems like they have just flown below the radar. So I'm curious to see if something comes out of that. Of course, Juventus with Fiat as well. We've seen Ronaldo move teams, and that's not something that Juventus is traditionally capable of in financial terms. So I wonder whether that's put them in the microscope. There's also external elements here, which I'd rather not get into. But this sort of discretion, when you cross these boundaries, it raises a lot of eyebrows in the footballing world and out of it. And I can tell you from fact that this will not be taken kindly by some of the biggest agencies and governmental bodies outside of football either. So I'm keeping a very close watch on this, because when there's mass amounts of money moving across borders, other than just evasion of taxes, there's a lot else going on out here. I don't want to allege something of big magnitude, but I think it's something that we should all keep a close eye on.
And I'm glad you're keeping a good close eye on it, mate, because I got absolutely no idea where you got that information from. But can you share it with us? Is there a website or something?
Nope.
Okay. Well, no worries. You'll keep us informed each week.
Perhaps not each week, but as more information comes out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. What about you, Tony? Any add on any of that, mate?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's more Schwinn's field than mine, so I'm not even going to try and pretend to have more knowledge than him on it. I think maybe because of his knowledge in it, he looks, and I've said this to him, so this won't come as a surprise, that he probably looks into it more than others and probably sees. I don't think the ramifications will be anywhere near the size of what Schwinn expects them to be. Obviously, he sees it from a wider industry. I'm looking just as football. And as he said, UEFA are almost certainly complicit. I'd imagine FIFA are at in some stage. And obviously, he said the Premier League won't take too kindly. I mean, they must know what's going on. It's obvious. I don't think we needed a report from football leagues to know that stuff was going on behind the scenes at Man City. So I think on football terms, if there will be a punishment because they've got to be seen to do something, but it'll probably be very minor. I mean, when it's happened before, they tend to have gone from a fight for a fine, which makes no sense. You're spending too much money, we're going to fine you more money. That makes no sense. They'll try and impose a transfer ban, I'd imagine, but it probably won't happen. But from a football sense, I think the punishments will either be none or very, very minor. That's where kind of my knowledge of it ends, and Schwinn starts with what goes on outside football. But yeah, I can't see the ramifications from inside football being anywhere near as strong as they should, and what Schwinn expects them to be. But as I said, he's much more educated on the topic than I am. So if you're going to listen to one of us, I'd probably listen to him, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree totally, because I'm well out of my depth on this one. Schwinn, I was reading earlier during the week, I can't remember the young kid's name, but did you see Manchester City, they bought that young kid for about $370K, and now they're looking at a transfer window ban or something for 2 years. Did you see that?
I'm not sure which kid we're talking about here. Are we talking about that Australian kid, Daniel Arzani?
No.
Is that his name?
It would have been an actual kid. Someone else just got banned.
It was 14. 14 he was, I think. Yeah.
Everton just got banned for they're not allowed to buy an academy kid that's previously been registered with another Premier League club for I think 2 or 3 years, because the rule has always been that you're not allowed to pay a fee for players under 16, and there's always been ways around it. Their parents find themselves very rich or in a very nice house in a new area next to the club that they want to, like, so Chelsea will buy them a very nice house in Chelsea, and it doesn't count as a fee, even though they've now been given a £4 million home or whatever. So there's always been ways around it, and teams are always getting looked into and always getting bans because of it. I think that's largely what Barcelona's transfer ban was down to a few years ago. Chelsea had huge issues with Gael Kakuta because he was somewhere in France. I can't remember the club, and similar things happened. There was another player, Bertrand Traore, who's now at Lyon, or he was at last I heard. Chelsea faced massive issues over him because they took him from, I believe, Burkina Faso. I could be wrong. They took him from his home country in Africa. And they schooled him in a private school in London from the age of, I think, 11. I'm sure his parents never worked in that time, and they lived in a very nice house. They was here as obviously his guardians. But it's circumventing the rules because they're saying, well, we didn't pay a fee for him. We didn't break the law because the law says no transfer fee. There was no transfer fee paid. So stuff. I mean, I haven't heard about this Man City case. So I'm not saying you're wrong, but it happens all the time, and it's just the ways they get around the law. I'd be amazed if City was stupid enough to actually pay a fee. What I'd imagine, if anything has come out that I haven't read, is that they've done something to the value of 375,000, and the authorities are looking into it.
Yeah, it was just I was just having a look at it as you were talking. So Manchester City spent an initial 370,000 or 482k on a Millwall 14-year-old Darko Gabby, who comes from the same South London estate as Sancho. And the reason I brought it up, because when Schwinn was talking about leaks, because the actual headline was Man City spent 370k on Millwall Tina's football leaks. More football leaks are coming out, so that's what type of remembered me to bring it up, Schwinn. That was all.
For sure. I'll just say something real quick before we move on to our next topic, and I'm going to be a bit cryptic here because of obvious reasons. For people who are trying to understand what I was talking about outside of football that Tony also sort of alluded to, I'll just leave you guys with this. And yes, this is obviously speculation. It's not based on any fact, but it's just the thinking, the logic path that I'm following right here. So it will be cryptic, but people who will understand will know what I'm talking about. So MBZ is very close to MBS, who is very close to DT. Qatar's ties with PLO and Hamas and its adversity with Israel will put a lot of focus on them being a political target. You know, when such money laundering and washing operations in billions of euros, pounds surface, then it can be a very easy segue for broader impositions. And to make matters worse for Khalifi, guess who gets along very well with DT? Emmanuel Macron. So that's one of the reasons I said that I'd be more weary if I were Khalifi than if I was the royal family from Abu Dhabi. I'll just leave you guys with that.
Okay. Geez, we're right into it this week, aren't we, boys? Hey, Football League, Super League, fuck me. Okay, Tony. I was nearly going to say Gordon Ramsay then. Fuck me. Aaron Ramsey. So Juve are both linked to him, and I did see a couple of Arsenal fans tweeting and whatnot during the week, wondering why the fuck we're getting rid of him. Some are saying, you know, I'm reading a report, Juve prepare for $10 million a year deal for Ramsey. You know, what you believe on that, I don't know. Bayer are very heavily linked, but I'm thinking it was more so a free deal at the end of the summer. So, what is it, mate? You know, Arsenal, and what should we be pissed off that we're getting rid of him?
It's a weird one with Ramsey, because I think he's a good player, but he just doesn't fit into the way Emery wants to play. I personally would have offered him a contract and sold him anyway, just to get the money for him. I mean, I know it's a bit more difficult than that. From the rumours, to be honest, the stuff coming out of Bayern, it looks like they've pretty much got an agreement with him. They're not allowed to say it because it would be illegal until January the 1st to speak to him. But, I mean, look, we all know tapping up goes on in football, and Arsenal will know it's happening. Arsenal will know Ramsey's agent's already speaking to clubs. So with what's coming out at the moment, it looks like Bayern's probably the destination. There's rumours that PSG have entered the race, so to speak. But if someone said to me now, here's £10, put it on Ramsey's next destination, I would put it on Bayern Munich. I mean, I know he's being linked with all these big clubs, and you can argue that they're better than us. So they're saying, why are we going to lose a player for free to a better club? But would they take him for a fee? We don't know. As I said, I'm of the belief he should be offered a contract. I always have been. Maybe the wages being spoke about are not viable for Arsenal, and I don't think he should be sitting at Arsenal on 250, 300 grand a week. It's interesting if that 10 million a year offer from Bayern or Juve that again is rumoured is true. It's actually less than what he was rumoured to be asking Arsenal. Of course, it would be a huge sign-on fee, but 10 million a year is less than 200 grand a week, so it's quite a big difference in the rumoured 250 wanted from Arsenal. it's a weird one. A lot of teams become a lot more interested in players when they're on a free. Bayern and especially Juventus are well known for it. I'm not surprised. I saw it coming. I think all the big clubs have always admired Ramsey. Whether it was going to be enough for them to make a bid of 50, 60 million, which is probably his thought of value, is a different matter. But in an open market with no transfer fee, to be honest, I'd expect almost everyone to be at least having conversations with him.
He'll definitely get picked up, but would you prefer him out of the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, every time we sell a player, I want them out of the Premier League. Because there's always that potential they can come back to haunt you, or they've got that bee in their bonnet because you let them go and they give an extra 10% on the days they come up against you. So whoever it is, I always want them to go elsewhere and never have to face us. Even if a player we see as shit, I'd rather them go somewhere else, because you never know, just that they have that extra motivation on that one day to play you. When they're playing you, it's always going to hurt you more than it hurts anyone else.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Schwinn?
Yeah, I mean, we've always said on this podcast that there's a lot of traits that Aaron has, which, on a individual level are brilliant. His work rate, his scoring from midfield. We've said he's a continental player, and that's not a title that we or anyone usually uses very often. You don't hear that. You hear world class more than you hear continental these days. And in Ramsey's case, it's as true as it gets. I'm disappointed that we can't use him. I understand that. I'm not questioning the manager or the hierarchy here, but I'm disappointed because he's been a very loyal servant. He's been through an absolutely traumatic injury, and he's come back much stronger than I expected, to be honest. It's going to be a blow to see him go, but as you guys just touched upon, that he's at least not moving to a direct rival, and he'll be moving abroad. So that's some solace to take out of the whole incident. Again, I'd rather keep him till the end of the season, because I don't think we'll make substantial investments in January. Even if we make a couple, I'm not sure how ready those players will be, how equipped they will be in understanding the opposition in the Premier League particularly. So he's a very useful player to have in that regard. He's versatile to an extent as well. We obviously know he can play midfield. He's obviously been tried at number 10. He's played on the right before, and to start the season off, he even was deployed as a center forward. Now, we obviously didn't enjoy that, but we know he can do a job there. And that's more than you can say for a lot of other players in our squad. So until the time he's with us, I think he deserves our full support. And he can be a crucial player, depending on how the season ends up going. So let's cherish this, because I think he's brought us a lot of happy memories, particularly in the last few years with his late goals in FA Cup finals and whatnot. So till he's with us, let's get behind the lad.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, we're going to get into some questions now, because Schwinn was a good bloke and put out a tweet on Friday, so we got some questions. But Schwinn, I'm just going through, mate. You forwarded me one. I don't know who it's from, so I do apologise. Maddie, is it? Okay. Can you guys and Tony have some section on the pod to discuss the Brexit impact on Arsenal and the European football in general? Now, just looking, I know very little about the subject, but I've read bits and pieces about it. I'm hearing that the rules for the players, from the EU were the same as the current ones from the non-EU players. So I'm reading here, 152 players, about 25% of the total would definitely not get work permits. What's your knowledge around this subject, Tony?
Look, I don't think anything will change, because they'll come in as skilled workers. I'm not heavily into politics, and Brexit is a whole contentious issue anyway with what's going on this week. There's every chance there could be a second vote. No one really knows what's going on with Brexit, but if we're going to assume it's happening, because that's where we're at the moment, it's been passed, the vote has been counted, I don't think too much will change in terms of players, because, as I said, they'll come in as skilled workers, especially on the money they're on. I think the idea of Brexit was to close the borders to anyone and everyone coming in. And I'm not saying I'm for or against this. I'm just saying this was the idea. And people coming in and claiming off the English welfare system when they've just landed in the country from somewhere else, and they're claiming benefits, they get a free house and whatnot. It was never an idea just to get rid of all people that weren't British. So your doctors and your nurses and whatnot were still meant to be allowed in, as far as my understanding is. So these guys will come under as skilled workers. I think there may be an issue with the signing of youngsters. I think they'd have to get a special visa. So, for example, just off the top of my head, Fabregas and, say, Bellerin came over here when they were 16. At that time, they weren't skilled workers because they were barely workers. I don't know how they would get in. I don't know if there'd be a special talent visa, which is something that used to be in place for non-EU in terms of like Brazilians and stuff, Africans. I don't know if that would come into place. So, I mean, it is a lot of unknown, but I would imagine, and obviously this is not based on any knowledge because there isn't any knowledge on it yet, but I'd imagine especially Premier League clubs would be largely unaffected. I'd liken it more to in America. To get a green card, you basically have to be able to do something an American citizen can't do. And again, Swin will have more knowledge than me on this. So with a top-class Premier League footballer, you're not going to say, oh, you can't sign Neymar because Danny Smith from the pub across the road can do his job. So I think it's going to be very similar to that. As I said, I think the only issue I can see is potentially youngsters.
Yeah.
Or it's probably similar to the work permit system we have at the moment, where I know when we spoke to Peter Coates and was talking about Almiron, I asked him if he would struggle with a work permit because I can't remember the exact number, but I think if you're non-EU at the moment and you want to get a work permit for England, you have to have played something like 60% of your country's games in the last 2 years to be qualified as a skilled worker. So maybe a system similar to that will come in. So you can't sign a random Spanish guy who's never had any international career. But if you're looking to sign a Sergio Ramos, then you can go ahead. I would imagine that's how it'd work. But as I said, at the moment, it's still speculation.
Yeah, I'm just looking. So the claim, obviously, I'll go to you, Schwinn, for your a bit of a say on what you think. But a quarter of the players in the Premier League would definitely not get work permits if players from the EU were treated the same as non-EU players. That's the claim. The reality check is, while several Premier League players would not automatically qualify for work permits, we cannot say they definitely would not qualify via the Football Association's expectations panel. So there must be some fucking panel or something.
Yeah, just to interrupt you. Sorry, just a thought of a good example. So they're saying a quarter of the players wouldn't get in under the current rules. I'd imagine Guendouzi would be one of them. He's never played for the full French team.
That'd be a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, so that just came to me. So he's never played for the full. But as I said, there used to be, I'm not sure if it's still about, a special talent visa. So you could say, look, this kid will be a future international that plays 60% of the time for his country. We're paying X amount of millions for him, so it shows that we believe that there obviously is a special talent. And then what there used to be, as I said, it may still be in place. There used to be a board of people that would then decide if that person warranted a work permit based on being a special talent, and not everyone got accepted. There's always stories of teams missing out on players because they couldn't get a work permit. You don't hear them so much anymore, so I think the rules may have slightly changed. But 5 years ago, you used to hear it all the time that this would have happened but for the work permit.
Yeah, you brought up Guendouzi. I'm just reading here. Among the examples that Mr. Jacobson gave, I don't know who he is, in the Premier League, so would not get a work permit was Arsenal's Alexandre Lacazette. Lacazette played in 3 competitive matches for France in the last 2 years, which is not enough to get 30% he would need for automatic GBE. But the $46.5 million that Arsenal paid for him, together with the reported wages of more than $10 million a year, should give him enough points to allow exception panel to grant him a GBE if he want. I have no understanding of how that works, but yeah. Anyway, at this point, I'm going to throw out the Schwinn.
Yeah, it's very complicated, isn't it? I mean, the way the UK Home Office decides this is through a points-based system. So they take into account the player's transfer value, their wages, their recent playing history, and they also take into account how much they represented the national team. And that table varies on the ranking of the national team and corresponding percentages. So if you are, I think, in the top 10 national teams, according to FIFA's rankings, then you have to play at least 30% of the games. And as you go further down the rankings, the percentage of the games increases. So you are more valuable to the team as the ranking of the team drops. Apart from the players you mentioned, I mean, someone like, I would imagine, N'Golo Kante would also not be eligible because he wasn't a star back then. The transfer value wasn't high, and the wages weren't certainly high when he joined Leicester from, what was it, Le Havre, I think it was? Or no, it was Cayenne, wasn't it? So what we have to pay attention to here is number one, there's 4 stages of Brexit, and only 2 have been confirmed. The third stage occurs on Sunday, the 25th, I think, when the EU summit happens, and it's the agreement has to be ratified. Then it has to be passed through the House of Commons. So there's a lot still left in terms of determining how the Brexit agreement will shape up. Now, I'm not going to sit here and claim that I've read 556 pages of what's come out of the agreement, but I have read in terms of what agreements in 7 or 8 pages of free trade deal is prospecting towards. Whatever claims you're reading on the internet right now are shaped on current rules. So you can discard these allegations that 12%, 20% of the players won't fit, because the UK Home Office will have to change its laws depending on the agreement that is shaped with the EU, right? Current laws may not apply. In all probability, they will not apply. So it's going to be difficult to speculate as of now what the law system will be. Secondly, depending on how much freedom the UK is given in conducting deals with different EU states, you might see different amount of recruiting happen from different countries. So, for example, the EU might say that you're free to trade with countries on an individual level, and we will not intervene. That's the utopic idea that the British government would want. So let's say that is indeed the case. But the deals that will be struck with Spain, for example, will be different from what you strike with France or Germany. So there will be a lot of give and take. There will be a lot of negotiation. And depending on the new terms that are set, you might see a different concentration on talent across different borders. I agree it will become difficult to find some of the younger stars. The exceptions panel that you guys spoke about is going to be bombarded with work, because as the pound devaluates, certain clubs that don't get cash injection will have to look at lower levels of talent at a younger age. And that will lead to a lot of work permit issues. But then again, it's hard to say what the work permit rules will be, 2-3 years from now. So I don't want to quite jump the gun. I don't think Brexit will, impact the Premier League as much as people think. I think out of chaos, a lot of opportunity is born. I don't think the financials in terms of sponsorship are going to fall. We might see a little bit of a trough, but as the price per sponsorship, for example, falls, you'll see more people coming in to try and sponsor them, because the Premier League will still cater to a global audience. It's hard at this point to say one thing with certainty, but I'm not too worried. I think it's a bit of a hoo-ha. I think it's a bit of politics going on as well to try and dissuade voters and audience members of what's happening behind the scenes. I'm just going to sit back and watch and then form my concrete opinion on how things might pan out.
I'm just reading here, you can't lost the plot over here, Tony. Got dead set. So, you mentioned Guendouzi, I mentioned Lacazette, Schwinn mentioned another couple of players, but an interesting one, so Mahrez. So he went to Manchester City for 60 million, Mahrez. Born in France, although he plays for Algeria. I'm not even going to get involved with that. So basically, he would have had enough points. He would have, with transfer fees, wages, he'd have been enough to convince this exceptions panel that he could get a work permit. However, back in 2014, when he went to Leicester, he would have absolutely no chance of getting a work permit, and therefore no Mahrez in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's entirely crazy. He would. I mean, he's probably been in UK long enough that he wouldn't have even come to this exceptions and all this points nonsense. He'd have been granted anyway. But yeah, I mean, I know you're using the same player, but you're essentially comparing a world class £60 million player to a 250 grand player from the French second division. As I said, I know that's the same player, but at the time of transfer, that's what you're comparing. So I don't agree with the rule, but I don't think what you're saying is ridiculous. If you take the name out of it and say, should a guy who's coming from the French second division for 250 grand have the same acceptance rights as a £60 million Premier League winner, Champions League player, chased by every major team in the world, you'd say, oh, of course they have different rights or different chances of being approved. But it just happens that they're the same name and there's been 4 years in between, or however long it is, 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think. I mean, look, there's loads of players. You could say the same as Schwinn said. Kante was one. He probably never would have when he came from Caen. He never would have got approved. But now it's a no-brainer. The Lacazette one's an interesting one because I'd imagine at the time we signed him, he would have been approved. But now, because obviously he missed the World Cup and it's on competitive games, and obviously in terms of international football, a World Cup has a large amount of competitive games in a very small amount of time. So missing that is huge in terms of your percentage of games played. So I don't know how the ruling works or has previously worked on that if you would have been granted one when you first came, but now you've slipped out of the eligibility, what happens? I'm not sure, but I don't think the rule. I mean, I think voting for Brexit in the first place was fucking crazy, but each to their own. But I don't think you saying like where you've just said, oh, it's messed up because of the Mahrez situation. And for me, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's why it's messed up. Yeah, no, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. You were talking about a skill panel before, though, Tony, and Schwinn, you got a little problem there, mate. Because Granit Xhaka...
What do you mean?
Well, Granit Xhaka, he's guaranteed to make a work permit on a skill base. Poor old Ozil, though, he's not going to get there.
Look, Granit's going to get in because of his international caps. Mesut is going to get in because of the wage he earns. It's that simple. Look, I'll just quickly say that this is a golden opportunity. You know, irrespective of what you think of Brexit, in the bubble of football, this is a golden opportunity to make sure that the sport remains intact in England. You know, depending on the rules and laws you formulate from now will dictate how the sport changes. And I've seen some reports, rumors floating around about how they're trying to reduce the number of foreign players that are available to each team. I think rules like that will really impact the sport negatively. And I understand the nationalist sentiment in terms of giving British talent an option and an opportunity to play. But we have to understand in competition, you can't restrict it to borders just. You know, look at Jadon Sancho, look at Reece Nelson, Chris Willock, Marcus McGuane. You know, these players have gone abroad to take opportunity. To give them a quota in their domestic teams is not going to do a whole lot. So you can try to formulate laws that will help the domestic pool. But if managers deem them unnecessary or not good enough, then they're still not going to get the chance. So I think it's a time for the FA and all bodies involved to look at the sport and open it up, you know, in this time, especially in the interim. You know, what you do 15, 20 years for the long run can change, of course. But when you're experiencing and expecting a trough in the aftermath of Brexit, then you have to open up these things so that, you know, you're getting a bit more supply to meet the demand.
Yeah, I agree. It's it's going to be hard. I don't know. We'll watch your space, Tony, I suppose, and good luck with you. Okay, boys, we'll go into a couple of questions. I'll scroll on through the questions. So if you got to get a question in, well, it's too late now, but for next show, Twitter's the best spot. We see questions coming from all over the place, and sometimes it's hard to follow them on Facebook and emails and fucking letters in my mailbox and all that shit. So just get them on Twitter at @clockend_talk. Okay, so Raf, I haven't heard of Raf before. So Raf, Thank you for your question, mate. Seeing as we need a left back to replace Monreal, should we be looking at Diego Laxalt from AC Milan? He looked good at Uruguay in the World Cup and could link up with Torreira. Could be cheap too. Oh, look, Tony, I don't know if you've seen much of him, mate, but he's good. He's a good player. He probably, I would think he'd be up around the 15 million. But yeah, no, he is a good player. Thoughts? You see much of him?
I've only really seen him in the World Cup, and I'm always hesitant to link players based on just a good World Cup. It could have been great before that, but his name was never mentioned. Where was he before Milan? Because he wasn't. If he was there last season, he wasn't even getting in their team. So I don't know if he was. So I could be talking.
No, he wasn't. Well, he was. What, 2018?
Genoa.
He was at Genoa at 16, 17, Inter 15, 16. He's been around. He has been around a bit.
Yeah.
Where else was? He was back in. He's been, look, pretty much Italy for his whole thing. I was obviously in Uruguay. He was somewhere, but he'd been in Italy, a few Italy clubs anyway.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not saying he's good or bad because I've not seen enough of him. As I said, I'm just hesitant based on just a World Cup when there's never heard of him. That's harsh because I had heard of him, but no one's ever been linked with him before. I always worry about them sort of players. I don't see much in the link up with Torreira because they're not in a on the pitch pairing. I know around the training ground they probably make it easier for him to settle in, but beyond that, there's probably not much to a link up. I'm not saying we shouldn't go for him. I'm saying I don't really know.
No,
but I've heard a few people ask the same question, so it's not like a ridiculous. It's not saying it's not like he's saying should we sign someone from League One or something. There's a lot of people suggesting that, but I don't know enough.
No, good left back. It's a name that I didn't really think about actually. I don't know why, but yeah, he's solid. He's solid, definitely solid in there. But I don't watch much of Milan games, but yeah, he's solid. Schwinn, you so much of him?
Nothing, next to nothing. I mean, again, just what I watched in the World Cup. Wasn't overly impressed or disappointed. As you boys said, came in and did a job. Can he do that week in, week out in an English season? I'm not sure. I'm not saying he couldn't, but I'm not sure. I will say that there's probably better options out there. I don't think that's a name that's really making a lot of headlines across Europe in football. And maybe he could be a gem that can be unearthed, but I'm not watched nearly enough of him to claim one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So is he keeping Rodriguez out of the team at the moment, or?
I think Rodriguez is injured. Could be wrong. You got me off guard. He could be injured, Rodriguez.
I think the last Europa League game, I didn't watch the game. I watched some highlights. I think Rodriguez was playing, which was, a week and a half ago, the last Europa League game. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Maybe he's out of time. I'll have to ask Glenn. Yeah, he's the AC Milan fan, so I don't know. Maybe he is.
I feel like every time I've seen any highlights, which is, again, not been very often, but I think he's a player that they bring on at some point, maybe to switch to a back five. Again, I'm completely shooting in the dark here, so I could be way off.
No, I've just had a look. So Rodriguez played against Juve. Was their last game.
So, I mean, for me, I don't think Rodriguez would be good enough for us.
Yeah, so if he's not keeping Rodriguez...
Yeah, so then you're linking the person who's behind Rodriguez. Look, football's not always that black and white, but just looking at it in a black and white sense, that probably tells me that he's not the answer to our problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, so yeah, I've seen a couple. Yeah, I mean,
they're pretty much the same age as well, right? I mean, I don't think there's too much of a difference, maybe 1 or 2 years. So it's not as if that there's a set hierarchy that Gattuso is going for in terms of experience.
I've just had it. He's playing left mid, Tony.
Well, again, but that again poses its own problems.
Yeah,
do you want a place? Do you want to get someone that isn't getting in their own team as a left back and bring them in as a left back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what he's playing in front of Rodriguez. That's right. I'm sure I've seen him flying around there. Yeah, he's playing in front of Rodriguez. Sorry, in not in left back, but in the position. Yeah, so I don't know, 20 million probably.
Then he only signed. I think he signed for 15 for them, so they're going to want a premium, especially going to the Premier League.
Yeah, they want more. So probably Schwinn's probably right. It's probably better out there.
Oh, there definitely is better out there, but you're looking at value for money and whatnot. As I said, it's not someone that I would be looking at as a first choice, but my knowledge is limited.
Mm-hmm. Okay, MAA Gunner, what player should each team in the Big Six buy to improve their team? Okay, let's do this. So we'll go with Schwinn first. So I'll go Big Six. So let's go Man United. Schwinn?
Oh, so many. Koulibaly.
So what player should each team in the Big Six buy to improve their team? Well, let's go position. Where does Manchester United need to...
I think they need a centre back. I don't necessarily think that Eric Bailly or Victor Lindelof are bad players. They could be, but we haven't quite seen the team play well together. So I think they could do with a very good centre back, and it seems Koulibaly is the consensus.
Yeah, centre back for me as well, Tony.
Same, but I'd have gone Maguire. Just used to the league, probably it plays out from the back very well, and that's where not only United struggling defensively, I think they struggled to get the ball out from the back as well. I think it was in Newcastle where they ended up with a centre backs of pretty much Pogba and McTominay just so they could play forward. So someone like Maguire, who they obviously did go in quite heavily for in the summer.
Now I've automatically gone to Manchester United, who are coming 8th on the ladder. So should I be going City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal, Bournemouth?
You say Big Six or top six?
He said Big Six, so yeah. Okay. Manchester City, Tony?
Fucking no one.
No one. No.
Just stop buying players and leave everyone alone. That's another thing I was going to say earlier. There's been rumours of a transfer ban for Man City.
There's probably that.
They don't need anyone.
No.
Oh. It's the least punished. No, I mean talking about the Footy League stuff. They're saying, City could face a transfer ban. That's the least punishing thing ever. You transfer ban them for a year. They don't need anyone.
What about a keeper?
No. They ain't going to get anyone better than Ederson.
Mm.
Not for what they need as well. I mean, footballing, he's unbelievable. He could play centre midfield for half the Premier League teams.
Yeah, they got too much. Okay, let's skip City. When you got one there for City.
If you put a gun to my head, I'd say another striker because I don't really rate Jesus, but they only play one up top. But that would be. They don't need it, but if you said, they have to sign someone, that's probably where I'd look.
Schwinn?
I think they could look for someone in Fernandinho's position. They've been linked with Sandro Tonali recently, who is just incredible to watch. I mean, I think he's 18 right now, plays for Brescia in Italy. And I've seen a couple of Brescia games because there was nothing else to do that day. And wow, that kid he's going to be special. And they've also been linked with a £70 million deal with Ajax for Frankie de Jong. So I think they're concentrating on that position. Fernandinho is getting up there in age. So I think that's the next acquisition that Pep Guardiola will look towards.
Well, Aguero, he'd have to be 30 something, wouldn't he? What point do you start?
Touching, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I'm thinking not obviously January, but next window or the window after. Or do they look at? No, City won't look at a young one coming in. They'll just buy whoever. What am I talking about?
Yeah, and I think Aguero just signed an extension too, didn't he?
Oh, did he? Okay. So.
Yeah, I think not too long ago, maybe a month and a half. So, I mean, as Tony said, they have Jesus now. irrespective of what you think of him, they have so many wingers that they can deploy in different ways. They can go to a false nine. Sterling can play down the middle with Mahrez and Sané on either side. I mean, they have a lot of options. And then, of course, they have Phil Foden, who can operate in that area. Brahim Diaz, who's done very well in the EFL Cup games. So there's not a whole lot that they need in the attack, I would say. I think the pressing position for them would be central midfield.
Okay, Liverpool, Tony?
I think they probably need a bit of quality in midfield. I mean, you look at a game against us and it was Fabinho, Milner and Wijnaldum, and then you add Henderson into that. And they're all great athletes, but I don't think there's any real quality. That's what they bring Keita in for. I mean, we're yet to see that. So I'm struggling to put a name on it, but definitely someone who...
Something in the midfields where they need...
So a bit of quality, maybe not a 10 because they have that front three and then they play a flat three in the middle, but someone that can deliver that final pass. So you tend to see like Firmino dropping off and whatnot. So, I mean, I guess it's probably what they bring Keita in for is probably what they bring Chamberlain in for, but obviously Chamberlain's injured and Keita as of yet hasn't done that job.
Okay. Schwinn, Liverpool?
Yeah, I was thinking around the same lines. I mean, I was confused between a centre back and sort of a central midfielder, number 10. I mean, on paper, a midfield of Chamberlain, Keita, and Milner is brilliant because they offer so much work ethic and they have quality on the ball as well. But I think someone like a Nabil Fekir, to Tony's point, could come in and deliver that ball against tight, packed defenses. So that'd be my shout as well.
Okay, Chelsea, Tony? You there, Tony? He's gone.
He's on mute.
Sorry, I was muted. Striker, a proper goal scorer. Off the top of my head, Icardi.
I was going to say the same name.
Yeah, I was thinking Icardi as well.
Yeah, although, I mean, for the record, I think Morata is a great player. I think he's suffering a lot.
I don't rate.
But I think he's proven he can score goals. He did it at Juve. He did it at Madrid for a brief spell.
He didn't. Like, you look at numbers and he never got... Like, I know he was never the main man there, but I don't think he's ever scored 20 goals in a season. His goals game may be okay, but it's not really. I mean, you just see, you don't miss that. A great goal scorer doesn't miss the amount of chances he does. He's like 3 or 4 chances per goal. And I mean, for me, he's their leading line. He's their number 9. Or even if you go Giroud, as much as I rate Giroud as a player, he just doesn't kick the ball in the back of the goal enough. And that's what I think they need, because I think if you've got the amount of attention Hazard demands from defences, that they're going to create chances, or their striker's going to have space, because you have to have half an eye on what Hazard's doing. So for me, I think they'd be a horrible proposition to defend against if they had an out-and-out goals, someone that just their currency is goals.
Well, Juve...
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree.
Yeah, well, Juve...
Sorry, go on, Tez.
Well, Juve, if they rated him, you'd think... I know it was a buyback clause for Real Madrid, but you'd think they'd go, well, we really rate this player, let's give them whatever they want, but they didn't.
Yeah, but, I mean, to be fair, they probably couldn't afford what Madrid were looking for anyway, right? Plus the wage packet that Morata would demand. I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, that's why my shout would have been a striker as well. And in Icardi, I think Morata's not as bad as people make him out to be. I'm not saying he's levels above some of the other good strikers around the game, but I don't think he's as bad as he's showing to be at the moment. But Chelsea probably do need better than him, even at his best. I also think they probably need a right winger. Willian has not really had a very good start this season. Pedro come in and does a job, but is he someone you can expect output from week in, week out? I'm not quite sure. So I think that's another position that they'll probably be, scouring for.
Okay, Tottenham. Tony?
Fucking stadium.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Schwinn?
A manager. Pochettino might be off. to Madrid. Well, hopefully, this is not based on anything, just intuition, you can say. So maybe a new manager.
Okay.
And maybe a striker who can fucking speak coherently.
Arsenal, Tony.
Right winger. The popular name choice is going to be Dembele. I can't see it happening.
Thank God you said that it's not going to happen. I thought for a second you were going to be like, nope, I'm just going to stick with Dembele on this one.
No, as I said, that's a popular name choice. I can't see it happening, but I think just a right winger. I've said it 4 million times. We should have signed Adama Traore in the summer.
No, we should have signed Shaqiri.
Good God.
Should have happened.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's loads of names floating about. Sarr, we've been linked with a lot, but just anyone that can play on the fucking right wing. I don't really care who at this point.
Schwinn, you agree?
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I knew you'd agree. Shaqiri should have signed.
Oh, fuck's sake!
You fucking boys don't rate him, do you?
Not as highly as you do, apparently.
For the price that Liverpool paid for him. Like if Liverpool had been 30 million, I would have went, fuck, that's a bit dear. But for the price Liverpool paid, I think he would have been a perfect signing for us. And I don't know why we didn't go for him.
But at the same time, if we were in the hunt for him, we'd have to pay more.
Why?
And when Liverpool come asking for a right winger, then a team that has just been relegated will not try to squeeze them out, knowing that Salah is going to be the one who's going to be playing, ahead of him. So they know he's going to be a backup, and if they say no to the first 2 or 3 offers, they're just going to walk away and look at someone else. I'm guessing there was not a lot of interest for Shaqiri. For whatever reason.
I'm guessing
there's been reports he's not...
Because he's fat, lazy, and failed at every big club he's ever been at. Yeah, probably.
And ill-disciplined. He's not turned up to training a few times at Stoke. Say for whatever reason, if you're not professional, you will not be respected in the game.
Watford.
What?
Next team, Watford.
Haven't we done all 6?
Yeah, I know. I was just throwing it in there because I couldn't believe how far they're up the ladder. They're in 7th. Shit. Bournemouth, 6th. Okay. Cosman Buta. Here we go. We can buy only one player in the winter. What position do we go for?
Right winger.
Yep, right winger.
There probably will be shouts for a left back amongst people answering this question, as in if anyone listening. But for me, we have left backs. We literally do not have a right winger.
Yeah, now we've got the ball.
And we have Ainsley Maitland-Niles who can do a job there, when required.
Well, we can now, yeah. Cosman Buta also asks, Emery sometimes struggles to break deep-sitting teams, even with PSG. Even at PSG. Do you guys think that when facing a team like Wolves we will fare better? If not, have we got this week's questions or last week's questions? If not, how do you propose we approach differently? Tony?
I think it's probably the golden question in football is how do you break down the deep defence? Because as soon as if a team only wants to get a point, they're going to defend very deep, no space in behind, and pack as many people in front of the ball as they can. I don't think there's a tactical answer as to how to do it. I would say we could probably take more shots from distance just to try and eke them out a bit. I mean, my first question when we spoke to the Dortmund boys when we first signed Aubameyang is, what's he like when he can't use his space and in behind against a deep space in behind against a deep defence? And we've seen he manages to find space somehow. I think with a bit better quality on the day, we would have scored more goals. But it is just the million or the $1 billion question in football. I don't think there's any correct answer. Take your chances is one of them, and move the ball quickly. I think against Wolves, for some reason, we moved. I don't know if it was just a lack of sharpness or whatever, but we moved the ball very slowly, which meant their defence didn't have to shuffle across at any speed, which makes it very hard to catch them out of position. Also, in them situations, a target man helps, and that's something that no tactical approach is going to change. We don't have one.
Okay, MAA Gunner, Schwinn, how much longer do you think Janko and El Neni will be at the club?
I think Janko is going to be there till the time his contract expires, which is another 2 years, I think, or maybe a year and a half. I don't think we're going to find suitors for him, especially that are willing to, pay his wage. I think he's earning more than Iwobi at the moment, if I'm not wrong. So that's going to be a tough one to sell. But I think El Neni's future at the club is, decided. I don't think he's going to be around for a long time. He's been very bleakly used by the manager. It's clear that Guendouzi has surpassed him in the hierarchy. And, of course, he's dealing with an injury at the moment. That's why he didn't feature in the Carabao Cup game or our game against Sporting at home. But, when a 19, 18, however old Guendouzi is, 19-year-old comes in and just takes your position instantly and is the manager's next call for that position, then you're in a bit of trouble.
Didn't he just sign a new contract last season?
Well, February, I think it was, of this year.
Yeah. This year, wasn't it?
I think we were all pretty happy about it because I think at that point he was doing rather well. And, of course, we didn't have Lucas Torreira. We didn't have Guendouzi. And that pair has come in and changed the dynamic of the midfield. And Aaron Ramsey was another one who was, of course, playing in that position. Now, he's not one of them either. So Lucas Torreira and Guendouzi have changed our team quite a lot on and off the pitch.
Yep. Okay, MAA Gunner also says... I was asked to scroll through. Was there any Ramsey questions? Yep, found it, boys. When Ramsey leaves, do we go for a similar player to him if there is one, or do we get a different midfielder who's more stable? Tony?
No, I don't think, well, for me, from what I see anyway, I don't think Ramsey's quality is the issue. I don't think he fits in this system because he's not quite a 10 and he's definitely not someone that sits deeper like a Torreira, Xhaka or a Guendouzi. So replacing him like for like would make no sense because, as I said, it's not quality that's keeping him out of the team. It's his role. So I think if you do replace him, you definitely don't go for a player that plays similar because, to be honest, I don't really think there's anyone that does his job better. Maybe Vidal, maybe, but again, he's only just moved and he wouldn't be an option for Arsenal. So if you're replacing him, you have to go for either a 10, a proper 10, or someone who is comfortable sitting deeper. But we've got at least 3 of them in Guendouzi, Torreira and Xhaka.
We won't even look at replacing his position, would we? Even if it's not similar player.
I'm very hesitant, and I always say this, of reducing the body count in the squad. So, like, when people say, should we... I don't want to say the names I was going to say because we've got a question on it later, but should we get rid of Ramsey and promote Smith Rowe, for example? But they're both coexisting in the squad. So, by losing one of them, Smith Rowe gets more chances, but your body count is still down. And we've seen recently how tired we look in games. So, a smaller squad isn't going to help that. It's only going to damage us even more. So, I'm always one that thinks, unless you've got an excessive squad, that you should always replace someone going out with someone coming in.
Well, I've got another question straight away on it, and that was MAA Gunner. Keep Welbeck or get rid of?
Yeah, that's why I didn't say the names. I mean, for me, I'd keep. It all depends on Danny's injury. I would keep Danny injury dependent. As I said, at the moment they're coexisting in the squad, and they don't. You can say, they both play striker, but they definitely don't command the same roles. So it's not. I don't see why Danny and Eddie should be an either-or situation, because you're not going to bring Eddie on against a deep defence in the last 20 minutes when you need to go long or run channels, or you need strength and pace and power on the left wing, because Eddie's a very good finisher and he's quite quick, but he's not Danny quick and he's definitely not Danny strong, and he's 1,000,000% not Danny tall. So as I said, you can loosely say, they both play striker, but their roles, it's like comparing Giroud and Lacazette or Giroud and Aubameyang. Their roles whilst playing the same position are so different that I don't see why it has to be either or.
Okay. If you could do the podcast with one current Arsenal player and one former Arsenal player, who and why? Schwinn.
Ooh, good question. Current player, no surprises here. Mesut Ozil, obviously.
Your two current players are just, you don't even need to say them.
Yeah, no surprises there.
Anyway. I don't know who I'd pick.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, for sure. Former Arsenal player, I'm torn. I want to go for Dennis Bergkamp, but I'm going to go for Ray Powler. I think that would be a fascinating chat.
Okay. Tony?
Current, I'm torn between two, and it's not really because of quality or anything. It's just because I think they'd be a laugh, and it's Rob Holding or Danny Welbeck. I just think they're funny. And obviously they can be serious when required. And they can speak English, which is a positive on both the two that you're going to pick. In terms of former, it's difficult. I wouldn't go Parler just because he's on everything. Like, he's on TalkSport. He does a load of speaking events.
That's true.
Let me be very boring and say Jack.
Oh, well, I thought you would say that. If you didn't say that, it'll be very disappointing.
Well, it's I don't know if I bring it onto the podcast, but probably about 3 months ago, like just in the summer when we was bored, one of my mates, and it was like an Arsenal group chat we've got, was said, if you could go for a drink with any previous Arsenal player, who would it be? And the answer to that was Jack for most of us, to be honest. But going for a drink and recording the podcast is a very different thing. So that's why I was a bit unsure whether I'd choose Jack.
Former Tony Adams, just brilliant. And Granit Xhaka. Ex-former Tony Adams, former Granit.
What we all should have said is either Kevin Campbell or Graham Stack.
Yeah, well, that's what we should have said. Idiot. Well, Sol Campbell, I want to get him on too. Wouldn't mind getting the yak.
I would love to chat with Sol. Seemingly there's a lot that he wants to talk about. You know, he's faced some issues in trying to make the jump from a player to a manager, and I'm sure he wants to talk about a lot of things. I just don't know how willing he is. But maybe it's something that we can look to and try and get him on sometime.
What would be the question you'd ask Jack, Tony?
I don't know, just football in general. It's all, I don't know. I don't have one question in mind. Like my answer is always like to. Again, if the question was you could have dinner with anyone, then my answer, I know he's not ex-player, but my answer would be Arsene Wenger every single time. But
Absolutely.
if you ask me what question I would ask Wenger, I don't know. Like I've always said, I would love to just sit down for an hour with Wenger, everything off the record, so that he can speak freely and just talk about football. Like I'd literally love it. But if you said to me, what would you ask? I don't have any like burning issue in mind that I'd say this is what I want an answer to.
Well, earlier in this podcast, I said to you I've got some breaking news later, so I'll share that with you a bit later. Might be somebody you want on.
It's not Arsene Wenger.
Okay. MAA Gunner, do you think people were happy with Emery becoming manager because they wanted anyone better than Arteta? I think if there were no Arteta rumours at all and we signed Emery, there would have been a lot of unhappy fans. Schwinn?
Interesting. I don't know. I mean, look.
Just before you answer, you wasn't overly pleased with the idea when he was announced, was you?
No, I mean, I was just about to say that even based on the facts that have happened, I was underwhelmed. I think saying I was unpleased or disappointed is maybe taking it a bit too far, but I was underwhelmed, So it's tough to say, how things would have gone if we had never been linked with Arteta. But despite being linked with him, I was underwhelmed. So maybe I would have been more unhappy. Maybe I wouldn't have. It's very difficult for me to answer that, to be honest.
Yeah. Who knows? Happy with what you got now, though, Schwinn?
Absolutely. I mean, we spoke about this, a couple of weeks ago in terms of where we are. Are we satisfied with that? And I think all of us agreed that we are ahead of where we expected. In terms of, maybe not in terms of all performances, but the Liverpool game was a big turnaround in terms of the performance. And when you look at the table, we've gotten decent points. At this point, Manchester United, for example, are closer to Cardiff than they are to City. That's not the case with us, and it probably was last year this time around. So that's an improvement, and that's all we can really be asking for.
Tony, do you think Dembele is a problem child? All this stuff in the media about him missing training, staying up to play video games, has put me off, says MWA Gunner, wanting him at the club.
I think clubs are massive PR machines, and they have the media in their pocket, as we've alluded to many times, despite John Cross denying it. I don't believe it. Well, I know he's wrong. So, it happened with Aubameyang. Dortmund, when he was about to come, they wanted to have a reason for letting him go, a reason to show their fans. And they were saying, he's a problem around the dressing room, he's always hard working. Whether you rate Aubameyang or not, you can see he's always happy, he's always smiling. There's not been a single complaint about his relationships with other players or his work ethic since he's been with us. So I think clubs just get that out of the way, especially if they're going to lose money on someone. If Dembele does go, whether it be January or the summer, they're not going to get back the money they paid for him. They may even have to let him go on loan, which is always going to be seen as a failure, paying 100 million for someone and either losing money on them or letting them go on loan. So you need to look positive to your fans and give them a reason why you're losing money or the player's been a failure. And you don't want to blame yourselves, say, we didn't coach him properly or we didn't utilise him properly. So their PR machines make a case against the player. I don't really believe what I'm reading, as I don't really believe it with any player when I read it, unless there's something that's clear and obvious that's happened. I tend to just think, it's the club putting their own spin on it to make themselves look good.
Yeah, okay. Schwinn, mate, Sultan, make a dream 5-a-side team with current Premier League players.
Ooh, very interesting. I'd go for David De Gea in goal. Aymeric Laporte as my center back.
You love that
Paul
guy.
Pogba. I do. I mean, I've always been a big fan of him, and I think he has a very high ceiling. Paul Pogba in midfield, along with Mesut Ozil and Hazard.
Okay, Tony, you got one?
It would be De Gea in goal. Probably I'm trying to think if there's anyone better. Actually, to be fair, Virgil van Dijk. I was toying between him and Alderweireld because Alderweireld's passing out from the back's very good, but Virgil van Dijk. Hazard would be in my team, but probably not as like an out-and-out striker as Schwinn's put him. I'd go Aguero, Hazard in the midfield, probably De Bruyne. That's very attacking, but it's 5-a-side. It's about scoring more goals than the other team.
I'll go Leno in goals. I like Van Dijk at the back. Granite and...
You know no shame.
Granite with Hazard, and I will
and
go...
Shaqiri.
No. Yeah, Granite Shaqiri in the mids. That'd be great. Zaha up front.
Talk about left field.
Very different, boys. Can't go. You fucking bandwagon clowns. Just jump on the button.
Interesting. I have a friend that used to play 5-a-side a lot against Balassi and Zaha, like separately. And he always said, like, more so with Balassi, he's like, one week you'll mark him out the game and think, this guy's useless. Like, how is he playing professional football? How is he a £30 million player? And he said, you go and play him against the next week and you just can't get anywhere near him. He was like, he's so hit and miss, it's unbelievable. And he said Zaha was very similar, but it more that Zaha would beat you every time, but then be wasteful with the ball. So he'd beat you and then go one-on-one and miss. But he's like, sometimes you play with them and they're just like... And this guy wasn't a player. He's a decent footballer, but he wasn't like a professional player or anything. But he's like, sometimes you play with them and think, fucking hell, how is there better footballers than these guys? And then other weeks you play with them and think, how are these guys footballers?
Actually, if I had Zaha up front, I'd have to go Mane and Salah in the mids. Granite wouldn't be able to keep up with the boys. bit slow. If there's one thing you could wish upon Ozil, Schwinn, what would it be? What gift would you love to give him?
Is this a question that you've just asked, or is it actually a question?
Yeah, no, it's just a question I've just asked.
No, it's a good question. That's why I'm surprised you asked it.
Oh, fuck off, cunt.
I think acceptance from his homeland.
That's a shitbag answer.
A good question with a shit answer.
Look, you can give an answer of your own, but I think the relief he will feel on a personal level, maybe not on a professional level, is going to be immense. This is a weight he's probably going to carry with him for a very long time, and it's not something that can be replaced by anything else. As a minority, I hate playing that card, but as a minority, I can accept that. I can sort of empathize with that, despite not being in it. I'm not living in the country with a billion of us, though, am I? So again, I mean, I'm not trying to play the victim card here myself, because I am not at all in a similar position. And neither is he. I mean, he's doing very well for himself, etc., etc. But there are certain voids in your life that cannot be replaced. And I think this has taken a serious toll on him. He might be happy in the short term, but I think it's something that will always be in the back of his head. So maybe a cliched answer, but that's genuinely what I wish for him.
I hate that answer. That's a shit fucking answer.
Oh, go fuck yourself.
It is a terrible answer.
What a fucking waste of space
go on,
that was.
Tell me, what would you give him?
Tony, I'll throw it at you, because you're fucking being relegated next week, huh?
I was expecting that anyway, so good on you.
Tony, same question.
For me, a killer instinct in terms of wanting to do damage all the time, wanting to score goals, busting that gut at extra. I'm not saying he doesn't run and lazy, because that's a very tired narrative, but just that extra desire to want to get on the end of crosses if he's in the middle, or that hunger. So, I mean, I toyed with that and pace, but for me, it'd be that want to score goals, because he clearly has the ability. And to be honest, for someone of his ability, only getting 5 or 8 goals a year, which is what he tends to get, isn't good enough for someone with his skill set. And again, it's not down to ability, because it has it. So it can only be desire or want. So that would be the answer for me.
Yeah, I'd run with pace. I think.
Yeah, that was, as I said, that was probably my second option, but I think it's very rare. I agree, he's not lightning quick, but it's very rare that he goes for a ball and I think, if he was just a little bit quicker.
Yeah. Well, I thought the other way, he might slot through them little gaps quicker. To put
for me, I think that's desire, because for him only scoring, as I said, 5 to 8 goals with his ability, as I said, it isn't good enough. He should score more. So I don't think it's lack of pace that stops him getting in them areas. I think it's maybe a lack of instinct, a goal scorer's instinct. I'm not comparing him and Ramsey, but if you look at Ramsey, he clearly has that instinct to get in the areas to score goals.
He does.
Whereas Ozil doesn't.
No, very true, very true. Schwinn, you could nearly give Ozil what you wanted to give him. Just just cut it out, a little badge and fucking, little fucking badge for him.
Yeah. Move on.
Him, mate, move on. Don't chuck your fucking dummy out of the Premier, buddy. Okay. Oh, here's one for Schwinn. Oh, fuck me, it's just pick on you today, isn't it? Look at this. So Clay... This
is what I get for being promoted, huh?
Clay conservative. Would moon rocks make Oasis tolerable for you, Schwinn? In my opinion, they would only make an epic group even better. I thought everybody loved Oasis.
Good God. I mean, look, I don't even remember why this Oasis thing came up. What was happening that day that I was shit-talking Oasis?
Well, didn't he do the opening ceremony at the World Cup? And I was like, it could have at least been Oasis, and you said Oasis is shit.
Oh, it was that the FIFA awards.
No, and then I was saying about the word. We were talking about the words, and I'm like, faster down. What was it? walking down the hall like a cannonball, faster than a cannonball or something, and you're like, they're fucking shit words.
I never said that.
Yeah, you're saying something.
I can literally only put this down to age. He's just too young to understand.
No, look,
you were saying,
guys,
like, what type of words were
let's
they?
clear the record. Let's clear the record, because otherwise we're only going to get Oasis-related questions next week, right? I don't mind Oasis. I mean, it's not as if that I hate Oasis. It was just I was watching the FIFA Best Awards, and for some reason Noel Gallagher was on stage performing, and it just seemed very off. It didn't feel right. And it just pissed me off because I just wanted to know who's won the award, and I didn't want to see anyone performing, so I was having a rant about it. I don't hate Oasis. Let's clear that right now.
I think you do.
Tony, if you could remember, I said, what it was? I remember I was singing that song on the WhatsApp, "Today's gonna be the day," and Schwin's go, "What the fuck? Who sings that?" Every Oasis fan would know that.
Oh, good God. I know that's Wonderwall. Everyone knowing that's Wonderwall.
What, you Google it? You Shazam that, did you?
Yeah, as you were singing, and Shazam actually recognized you.
Oh, they would.
Bite me.
Absolutely. Okay. He did have a second part of the question. Would you guys buy a left back in January, or just throw Niles until Nacho is fit and buy in the summer? Thanks, guys. Sure.
Buy in the summer.
Yep. And Tony, you pretty much agree with that too, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's heard something I didn't, but saying in January and wait for Nacho to be fit, I've not heard anything that Nacho is going to be out for that long anyway. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't buy in the summer unless Emery bins Kolasinac, which I personally would, but I'm not sure if Emery will. They're in talks to give Nacho a new contract. We all know that. So Nacho signs on. Unless they bin Kolasinac, then we're going to have two left backs anyway, with a Maitland-Niles as a cover, as a emergency, and even possibly Lichtsteiner if they give him an extension as an emergency. So unless he bins Kolasinac, I can't see us signing one in either, but I definitely can't see us signing one in January.
Okay, we have a question out of our WhatsApp group. You can find that on our bio too and join that. And
I've removed that actually from our bio because we're getting a lot of spammers in there. So if you're a listener and you want to get involved in that chat, then just throw us a DM and we can send you the link.
Yeah, no cunts in there either.
Oh, you're in there.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm there. I'm the only cunt that's allowed in there, right? Y.I.A. Go and fuck yourself. That's a shit name. Instead of this, you're. I'm not even reading this cunt's question. Fuck his question. Right, next question.
I think it's actually a reasonable question.
Okay, is it worth reading? Okay. Instead of this Euro Super League bollocks, Champs. Are you sure this is a good question? Champs Large has got boring and predictable of late. Super League will only enhance that. How about a Leagues of Europe Championships so you get a Premier League 11 playing a Serie A 11, a Bundesliga 11 via La Liga 11, etc. Every top league in the Europe plays each other. Settle once on for all greatest leagues in the world debate. Also something different and interesting. Tony, there you go.
I mean, your question reading was terrible then.
It's fucking hard to read.
For me, it's always that's always been an interesting idea. I mean, they have the All-Star match in the MLS, which seems to go down quite well, and it's something that I always think would be very interesting if they do it as part of pre-season or something. I don't think it settles the debate what's the best league, because you're going to have a lot, and it creates huge politic issues, and it probably isn't viable to happen. But I'd be very interested in it did, but I wouldn't have it instead of a Euro Super League or instead of a Champions League or instead of anything else. I just think it'd be something that they could do at times, and it'd work quite well. It'd be interesting to see if fans unite, if Tottenham fans start cheering on Mesut Ozil, or if United fans start saying how great De Bruyne is if he plays well in that game or whatever. It'd be interesting to see, and I think it would be a good exhibition of football, but I wouldn't have it instead of other things. And as I said, it's probably practically not possible.
Island Gooner, he actually sent that through as a screenshot because the other bloke was too fucking lazy. So that's why it was a tiny little picture on the phone. Okay, Shree's got a couple of questions. Our good mate Shree, legend of a listener. I feel like this is the best. What are you laughing at?
Nothing, mate.
I feel like this is the best of the academy talent Arsenal has had in a while. Nelson, Maitland-Niles, Smith Rowe, Eddie, Willock, etc. Are they really that much better, or is it rose-tinted goggles? I don't rate Willock at all.
Well,
I like Eddie. I like Smith Rowe. I like Maitland-Niles. Nelson, well, Jesus Christ, isn't he having a blinder over there?
He got Rookie of the Month in the Bundesliga.
There you go.
But for me, it is massive rose-tinted goggles. And the reason for that is, say, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, we used to play in the Carabao Cup with 0 first-team players and beat Premier League sides 5-0, 6-0, or top-end championship teams. I remember us going in a year, we beat West Brom 3-0, we beat Sheffield United 6-0 or 6-1, and no one playing would be considered a first-team player. We had the breaking through Jack Gibbs, Ramsey, and players like J. Emmanuel Thomas. And I know you might be sitting there thinking, yeah, but where are they now? But it's what I'm saying, that group of players.
I was thinking that as you were rattling names off them, thinking, where are they then?
Yeah, but they were beating Premier League teams with ease with just them. No, they weren't. Look at us now. We're playing Blackpool with 4 first-team players, 1 or 2, maybe 3 of these young players, and struggling. These guys were on their own beating these teams, beating Premier League teams. So, and they won the FA Youth Cup and whatnot. I think people like Frimpong played. For me, you can't compare a team that is regularly beating Premier League sides with a team that can't, basically.
Well, so Nelson's, look, as you say, Rookie of the Year. So let's say...
No, Rookie of the Month.
Rookie of the Month, sorry, not year. Maitland-Niles, Smith Rowe, Eddie and Willock. Do any of them, if they weren't in the Arsenal youth squad or whatnot, would they be playing first team for any other team in the Premier League?
I don't think any of them are ready to start in the Premier League. As that team I mentioned before with Jack, Gibbs, Ramsey, they wasn't ready to start in Premier League sides at the time. I'm only talking about at that time. They were more exciting because they were already beating Premier League teams, so you could see them coming in and playing. I'm not trying to make this about Jack, but he went on loan to a Premier League side at 16 years old. So you can't compare these guys to them. Reece had a brilliant month, but at 19, Jack played 50-odd Premier League games for us, got man of the match against probably the best club side I've ever seen. So you're looking at now. Look, we know what Jack's done, and he never achieved the level we hoped he would. So I think hindsight does play a huge part in this. But if you're comparing apples with apples, so that team then with this bunch now, for me, there's no comparison.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Schwen, I'll get your thoughts on it, mate.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that one bit. I think we've suffered in a time where we didn't produce a lot of talent, particularly since the turn of the decade. And maybe because of that, some of the new talent that has come up is being hyped and maybe being seen in a more positive light than they should be. I'm not discounting any of these young players, but look at Guendouzi, for example, right? He's come in and already surpassed some of these youth players. Even throw Ainsley Maitland-Niles into the mix, who has been talked so highly of from not just fans, but even some of the club hierarchy. He's been given a chance, but this kid comes in, and suddenly we're not talking about Maitland-Niles in midfield anymore, who arguably is higher in the pecking order than the names mentioned by Shree. So I think it is rose-tinted glasses to an extent. I do think that some of these players, in particular Smith Rowe and Nelson, have a very high ceiling. They've shown some very good sparks every now and then. Nelson, of course, is tearing it up in the Bundesliga. And even Willock, I think he's been playing very well this season by all accounts. So I think they have the potential. But to say that they're ready is, I think, is a massive overstatement.
Is Jack injured, Tony, for West Ham?
Yeah.
Poor bastard. Yeah.
As I said, I agree with Schwinn. I think that they have huge ceilings. Some of these guys, I make no secret of being a huge Maitland-Niles fan. I think Smith Rowe's got a huge ceiling. But as I said, we're comparing when we looked at Jack and Ramsey, who are probably the two that done the best. The ceiling we thought them guys had, and look, they haven't made it. But if you're comparing the ceiling what we thought Jack and Ramsey had at that age to the ceiling we think Maitland-Niles and Smith Rowe have, for me, I always thought Jack and Ramsey were going to be levels and levels above what I think Smith Rowe and Maitland-Niles could be. Look, everyone thought Jack was going to be world class. Not one part of me thinks that Maitland-Niles or Smith Rowe are going to be world class. I think they could be very, very good footballers, but never considered world class. And that's what we expected of Jack. As I said, he didn't make it, but you've got to compare what we expected of them versus what we expected of these guys.
Okay.
Can I just quickly add one more thing, which I think is an important factor in this distinction?
Mm-hmm.
I think when talking about Jack and Ramsey, and of course we're talking about central midfield here, I think we at times devalue the importance of role models that some of these young players look up to. Now, if you speak with Jack in particular, you'll know that Cesc Fabregas played a very pivotal role in his development, in his mental attitude. Maybe even Aaron to an extent. I don't think Aaron and Cesc are very close to each other, but Jack and Cesc certainly are. If you look at the last 10 years, there's been a lot of change at the club. Well, more so in the last year than the rest, but we've not really had fixtures in the team that sort of play that role, I guess, or at least that's my feeling from the outside. I haven't seen that sort of nurturing happen from the top down in terms of the players, which is invaluable, I would imagine. So when you lose some of those characters, some of those leaders, this might happen. Mesut Ozil cannot teach vision to a young player. He's not Arsenal ingrained anyway. Let's be honest about that. We've not had that sort of characteristic in the club for a bit now. And I think that's an important factor to address as well, that sort of plays into this whole dynamic of youth prospects not quite living up to it.
Okay, we've got a couple from Sarvesh. Even the talk of the European Super League is disgusting. It's going to distract fans from the game more further, and it will make sure the rich stay richer. I'm sure this is Tony, dead set. Rich stay richer, and the small clubs will have no chance, and we already have European Super League. It's called the Champions League. Yeah, righto, Tony. Sarvesh says, again, and what do you guys think the punishment will be for the clubs involved in Football Leaks info? You boys did touch on that, didn't you? Tony didn't think it was going to be that bad. Schwinn seems to think it will be pretty bad. Sarvesh says, I think it should be a transfer ban or something like that, but we all know the clubs will be fined a certain amount that will be easily paid. Okay, thank you again, Tony. Tony, you been reading this bloke's fucking questions before you come on the podcast?
Have you seen how active he is in that other WhatsApp group? Do you think I ever have time to talk that much? Like, there's just no way it's me.
Well, he says exactly what you're saying here. I'm thinking, Jesus Christ.
Well, no, I mean, obviously, as I said, he mentioned the fine, which is because it's what's happened before. PSG were fined, I think Man City were fined, and they had their Champions League squad reduced from 25 to 22, which made absolutely no fucking difference. And as I said, with the transfer ban, it wouldn't impact City particularly, depending on how long, but they're never going to hand out more than a 3-window ban, I don't think. so it probably wouldn't impact City. PSG are the other people that footy leaks have gone quite strong on, and I don't think, look, they're going to win the league regardless. So unless, I don't know if they can't make them sell players, but if they could make them retrospectively earn that money back, which would only really come from sales, then that would be an interesting punishment, which is why the rumours are about of PSG having to potentially offload Neymar or Mbappe, because it's sort of back paying where they broke the rules. That would be a more interesting punishment, but I don't think there's ever a way that would ever get passed. Even if it gets passed in football, you go to any court of like human rights or whatnot, and there's no way it'd be passed through restriction of trade and human rights and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm. I just think, as you're talking, I'm thinking Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid, they got the one transfer ban, but I can't remember what they actually did wrong. Only got the one window, didn't they?
Barcelona did as well, because I remember they could sign, but they couldn't register. They signed Arda Turan, and he sat on his arse for 6 months.
Yeah.
I think, again, it was young players. I think it was what we were saying earlier about young players.
Yeah, okay. It's a bit different of the Neymar Mbappe situation.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, Man City and PSG have both fallen foul of financial fair play before. And but as I said, their punishment was a fine, which makes no sense. And they had their squads reduced from 25 to 22. But in reality, the last 3 members of the squad have only been using dead rubbers anyway. So, like, I mean, and you always have the option to change that 22 in January if you go through to the knockout stages.
It's not like it's a big punishment, is it?
No, I mean, no. It's not, for me, it's a nothing. But you probably put 2 keepers in instead of 3, and then you only have to lose 2 other players. And I mean, with the squads these guys have got, it may have looked a little bit embarrassing that they had to leave certain not like first team squad members out, probably big name players, but barring causing embarrassment, it didn't really have any effect.
Mm-hmm. But he says his biggest question I have is, with so many of these clubs manoeuvring around the financial fair play rules and guideline, is it time for the footballing committee to admit that it is a failure and it doesn't work? And should they just try to come up with a new set of rules and relegation? I don't know what you do though. Like, we have a salary cap here in the A League, and there's I think, I don't know, they're probably the only league that has a salary cap. I say get rid of it. Those who sink, and those who swim, because it's a restriction of trade for the league here. I don't know how else things would work, Tony.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. There's always these thoughts rumoured around. I mean, football wasn't too bad 10 years ago or whatever it was before FFP came in. It seemed to work fine, but then suddenly all these oligarchs came in and it changed the landscape of things. I don't think there's anything effective. I think Arsenal suffered massively because I think Wenger truly believed that financial fair play would work and tried to abide by it before it came in, and we got left behind. It's a tough one. I think that if you say they might as well, for me, completely get rid of it, because the teams are doing what they want anyway. Yeah, they want to find a way. They find a way around it. So I don't think a salary cap's the answer. They have it in other sports. It doesn't work. I see people mention a draft system similar to America, but that wouldn't work in a million years over here.
I don't even know how it fucking works now, to be honest.
It's just a mess. To be honest, if I was in charge, I'd completely scrap it and say, do what you want. If you lose money and go bust, it's your own fault. You're not costing the league anything. Yeah. Someone else, there's a pyramid of teams ready to come and take your place. I know. They're trying to stop teams like Leeds, are probably the main one, they were a huge club, got to the Champions League semi-final, and then as soon as they underachieved, they nearly went bust because they pumped so much money in and then they weren't getting the return anymore. But I think you've got to say to your owners, that's your own fault. And yeah, it's probably horrible for the tons of Leeds fans and Portsmouth fans who suffered it, but they were more than happy to support the club when they were spending that money and getting to Champions League semi-finals and winning the FA Cup for Portsmouth. And yeah, it is horrible fans because they may have no longer have a club through no fault of their own. But I'd probably prefer that to these tin pot punishments that are not doing anything to anyone. And if someone's stupid enough to pump a load of money into something and lose it, then it's their fault. I think maybe if they bring that back in, but improve there's a test when you buy a club called the something and proper owners test. I can't remember the correct name. Schwinn may know it. They should probably make that test better, but then to try and stop teams just going bust, because you don't want a league of teams constantly going bankrupt. So they should, for me, strengthen the fit and proper owners test, it's called. Make that a very tough test to pass, but then ditch financial fair play.
Yeah, and I know it's probably a fair way off, but Newcastle United, they're probably the next team that might look like selling in that. He doesn't spend no money on players. Fans are going off their fucking head and whatnot. But what's the big drama if somebody comes in, buys a team, and puts some money into the club? I don't get it. Well,
as I said, it's the say someone comes in, a rich person from anywhere in the world, and puts everyone on 200 grand a week contracts, tries to buy success, and then gets bored, doesn't get the success he wants, and just goes, oh fuck it, I'm pulling out. You suddenly got loads of people become unemployed on X amount per week. Yeah, they'll get new contracts, but they may have become accustomed to a certain life. The club goes bankrupt overnight, so that club no longer exists. And probably for a town like Newcastle, it's probably be the most catastrophic case because they're a one club city. They have a huge passionate fan base. Everyone, it's not like London where you get fans of all the London teams, but then you also get Man United, Liverpool fans everywhere. In London, you get fans of every club. In Newcastle, in general, you don't even ask the question, who do you support? They support Newcastle. Yeah. So that is probably one of the most catastrophic examples, and that's what financial fair play is supposed to, or trying to stop. But as I said, I think it's punishing the many for the sake of not even the few, for the sake of the one and twos.
Mm-hmm. You want to weigh in on this, Schwinn, or are you right, mate?
I completely disagree with you guys, actually.
I knew you would, because you're very big on this financial stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand that there's a lot of problems with it, and there's always room for improvement. My issue isn't necessarily with the rules; it's with the enforcement and the punishments that ensue if you break the rules. We're not talking about the specifics here of whether the 7 million wage increase is a problem. We're talking about how clubs are getting away with it, and that's the problem. Plus, you guys just spoke about the fines. Now, fines in itself are not enough of a punishment. I really like the idea of the retrospectively earning that money back system. That I think that's something that would force the clubs to be a bit more financially healthy. And look, that's what it's all about at the end of the day, isn't it?
Is that legally enforceable? Though? Look, your law knowledge is a million times better than mine, but I just can't see that would ever legally be enforceable.
I mean, look, I'm not going to claim to be an expert in that anyway, especially about a law which isn't really a law, and there's probably going to be litigation one way or the other. People are going to try and fight it. But when you set up bylaws for an organization, for a competition, as long as they abide by ESC laws, I don't think it should be a problem, and I don't see how it would infringe upon ESC laws because it's not discriminatory in any way.
And making players move against their will. Because, say, for example, Neymar, he might love Paris, might not want to leave, but if they've got to earn that money back, the only way possible, because they're not allowed to put their own money in, is to sell Neymar. So you're essentially, I don't use this word lightly, you're essentially making him a slave without, he has no free will. He doesn't have that choice.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm not an expert in this, but it's possible that it will lead to some sort of discrepancy in one way or the other. I think even with City, for example, when they were fined, eventually they got away with paying 17 million out of, I think 54 million was the fine that UEFA put on them.
It's stupid because you're saying to someone, you spent too much, spend a bit more as your punishment.
Right.
That fine is a ridiculous option.
And for certain clubs, it doesn't matter.
So what should it be? What should the punishment be then?
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try to formulate a punishment that abides by all laws, right? I think that there's certain people who are dedicated to doing that, but I don't think the problem is with financial fair play. The idea, the philosophy behind it is correct. We haven't seen a lot of clubs go into administration like we did in the early 2000s. I think Portsmouth is an example that comes to mind. Overall, the scope of competition has become better, I would argue. And to some extent, some of the credit there has to go to financial fair play. It can be improved. I'm not denying that, but I don't think scrapping it is the right way to go, because the sort of level playing field we've come to establish will completely go away.
Oh, well, two of us said scrap it, and one of us said don't. So let us know your views you can let us know on @clockend_talk as well on Twitter, because I'm interested in the subject. So, yeah, go on, Ted.
No, I was going to say, I think Schwinn's answer and mine to an extent before the question was asked, you knew would be different. He's much more into financials and stuff. I just don't see. I agree that Portsmouth is one case, but it is one case, and then for that you can put cases for loads of clubs that have thrived. And you say level playing field, where like the same teams that were winning everything are still winning everything. So for me, nothing's changed. Croatia have just gone 1-0 up against England, by the way. So it's a shit competition that no one cares about. Yeah, for me, I just don't think it achieves anything. And as I said, it's punishing the vast majority to save as I said, I don't even want to say few, because it may save someone like Portsmouth. But if they would have just done a proper fit and owners proper test, a complete, I'm trying to think of the word without saying proper, a good enough fit and proper owners test, that owner never would have got in charge in the first place, which would have eliminated all of them problems that they had without financial fair play. I mean, they had an aging Canoe on over 100 grand a week, and that might not sound like a lot now, but in them times, I know it was only 10 years ago, but that was massive money. I mean, people like John Utaka are on 80, 90 grand a week. It was madness. But as I said, a good fit and proper owners test would have wielded that out without punishing the rest of every other club in the world, essentially.
Schwinn, I just want to go with you for a minute, because I said obviously a salary cap. Do not ever mention salary cap. It's just shit, right? But I understand the concept of it, but it's not going to work. But what I'm more interested in is the draft. How Tony just said flat out no, that it wouldn't work over there. Would it work?
No, never in a million years. Well, I mean, American sports are very institutionalized. There's a proper hierarchy and there's a proper path for people to follow if they want to succeed at a sport and go pro, as they say. In that ways, football is very much like Hollywood. There is no set recipe in terms of how you can make it to a top club. It's way too spread out. In America, you start playing sports at your school level, and then you play at varsity level, which is playing for your school's team, and then eventually you get scouted and you go play for a university or a college, and then that's when you enter the draft, and then you get picked up from different sports teams. That's not nearly close to the path that people follow in football. So with the way football is spread, it's just never going to work, because you don't have set bodies that sort of play the housing and the administrative role in that regard when it comes to player recruitment. So it's going to be a massive disaster. Plus, it's going to be impossible to implement, because you'll have people that don't go through the institutionalized system, and there'll be a parallel economy that will be formed that gets away from all the rules and regulations, and it's going to be investing power into the wrong body altogether.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, we've got a couple more questions, but they're not really questions. T. Boogie was just asking is there any transfer updates floating around, Tony?
No, there's always rumours flying around, but I don't think there's anything concrete enough to warrant talking about.
Okay, and then Jake, what do we think of Tottenham?
Shit. What do you think of shit?
Tottenham.
Righto. So that's about it, boys. That's us. We've managed to do 2 hours and 10 minutes of podcasting on absolutely no fucking...
Well, this is the most political podcast, hopefully, we're ever going to do.
Yeah, it was full on, wasn't it? Yep. Very good, though.
Politics and talk.
Very good, though. Okay, thank you for... I'm just checking. Okay, so yeah, I was just checking if there's any more questions because there's a couple more notifications. But just people are getting their entries in. You can win that shirt from Urban Arsenal. Basically, you know, like I said before, just a screenshot of your podcast app and showing that you subscribe to the podcast and say a couple of nice words or call us a bunch of cunts or whatever you want to do. Like Clay has, clearly must listen. If you want to know what you're talking about, although it's not the most family-friendly pod. That'd be Schwinn, fucking cunt. You will definitely get quality, unique perspective with plenty of humour mixed in it as well. Fantastic job, fellas. There you go. So, Schwinn, you got to get a bit more family-friendly, mate.
Yeah, it's me who's got that problem, isn't it?
Yeah, so anyway... Subscribe. That RC fella says he's subscribed for that some time now. Love the mix of knowledge. Thanks, mate. I'm full of knowledge, insight, analysis.
For fuck's sake.
When he means knowledge, he means my vast amount and your lack of.
And he loves the pure potty mouthing. Bloody Schwinn again. Can always listen to some good lads talking about his favourite team. So anyway, you can just do what they do and screenshot your bloody fucking whatchamacallit on the Twitter, and we'll read them out on the podcast next week as well. And yeah, all right, boys, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We might be back. We might come back next week. We'll see how we go. Or Bournemouth.
Well, there's a game next week. So
yeah.
We will be back.
Oh, we're back.
But we're playing Sunday, so it'll be Monday. It's 8 days from now.
8 days from now. Excellent. Thanks, boys. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You can follow us at clockend_talk.